I think for me is when I look at all the challenges that we could face with AI, I try to take two steps back and say, okay, how we're meeting customer needs, how we're building the right brands, and how we're trying to be responsible and in the end use some common sense and do the right thing as well.
Hey there, I am Digital Delane, and boy, do we have an exciting episode for you today. We're diving in headfirst into the world of AI and predictive analytics, and trust me, it's not scary as it sounds. In fact, it's revolutionizing how we understand our customers. Now, I've got three amazing guests who are going to break it all down for us. So whether you are a marketing pro, an entrepreneur, or just curious about the future of digital strategy, you're in for a treat. So let's get this show on the road. All right, so let me introduce to you our stellar lineup. First of all, we have Hannos Tabak. He is a strategic marketing leader with over 18 years of experience, specializing in driving ROI for brands through digital transformation and AI in marketing. Hey, Hannos, how are you?
Pretty good. How about yourself?
I'm doing well. Thanks for joining us. And next we have Chris in West. He is a recognized speaker and author focused on digital marketing, SEO, and analytics, helping businesses optimize their online presence. Hey, Chris, what are you looking forward to in this conversation?
Well, I'm looking forward to share some tips as well as learning from everybody here as well.
Awesome. All right. And next we have Pierre Dubois. Pierre is the founder of Zamana, an analytics consultancy. Pierre specializes in utilizing data analytics to drive business insights and improve marketing strategies. Pierre, you ready to do this?
Ready to rock and roll, or
All
rhythm and
right.
blues, whichever the taste may be.
I hear you. All right, folks, let's drive into our hot topic today. Now, we know AI and predictive analytics aren't just fancy terms to throw around at a networking event, right? They're completely changing the game on how we understand and connect with consumers. It's like having a crystal ball, but way more accurate. So today, we're going to unpack all of that stuff, from how it's evolved to real world success stories, and even ethical stuff we need to do, or whatever ethical stuff we need to watch out for, right? So if you're ready to get your minds blown, let's jump right in. All right, so I'm going to kick this one off and pitch it to you. Hannah, how have you seen predictive analytics change over the years? Kind of give us a before and after picture.
Sure. And that's a great question. Before I forget, thanks a lot. I mean, I think it's really exciting to talk to all the amazing folks. So from a predictive analytics perspective, I think it's a buzzword that we've been hearing in marketing for a very long time, right? So that's where, now I'm dating myself, but when Facebook first started off, you started off by giving out your email address, right? And you started off by providing information about who you are. And then you got targeted based on that information. Now, as predictive analytics has grown, what's happened is we've got so many different data points. What's allowing marketers, brands, or entrepreneurs is really to how do you engage folks and how do you analyze the data from point A to point Z. So that's everything from how do you drive better return on investment for your marketing dollars to how do you do customer segment analysis. So, predictive analytics probably started Excel 20 years ago. I think we were all doing a couple of Excel formulas or regression analysis, but now people are using ChatGPT. There are multiple brands, or everything from Adobe to Google has a suite of predictive analytics as well. Not here to do a product placement for anyone, but it's really this kind of an opportunity where originally 20 years ago, it was more based on the data that was available and provided by users. But now it's how do you take that data and how do you maximize the customer experience and drive the right value for a business?
Absolutely. And let's get real for a second here. What roadblocks are businesses hitting when trying to implement this stuff? And Pierre, do you have any insight on how organizations can get over hitting this roadblock for predictive analytics?
I do. And I think Hannah's brought up a really good point towards the end about the number of tools. That's a big, big part of it. It's a lot of choices. And the challenge that we have, no matter what industry you have, is that it's just trying to make decisions faster. And I think that's a big challenge for everybody. And sometimes it could be just basic as, do I have the right tools to do I have the right analysis? I think what you want to do if you are starting out is to recognize how the data is helping you in terms of identifying a trend first, and then stepping into more of the statistical part. And I'm going to explain both those real quickly. Like, for example, Google Analytics is a brilliant tool if you are doing e-commerce or running an app, and you just need to have an idea of how many visits and what sort of conversions are happening on a website or app. But suppose you want to make a forecast from the data. This is where something like maybe R, Python, and getting into Chat GPT, forming some more advanced tools that can help you in understanding if something is sustainable. So you start small and get the trends part, and then you start working on the predictability part, trying to figure out what things correlate and how they work together. I think that's how you start making some headway with a lot of the tools that are out here today.
Man, that's fascinating. I mean, we really got into the weeds there for sure. Chris, can you paint a picture for us? Tell us about marketing campaign or tactic that really knocked it out of the park when it comes to predictive analytics.
Well, yeah, sure. So to piggyback on what I said already, I think one roadblock is as well is just the education of it. So for a small business, for example, many of this topic is fairly new. So I think we got to consider who's going to be using the predictive analytics. So with mine, I use like Google Analytics, and a lot of times I'll say there's about 5 different ways you can use predictive analytics. And what this has helped us, we see people can make decisions based off of what is predicted within that tool. So now they know how much inventory to keep. So if we know that we're going to sell possibly 1,000 units, now we can better estimate our revenue, better estimate our profit, and we know exactly how much inventory. So that's pretty much one thing that helped the companies that I've seen and worked for as far as campaigns. So predicting revenue, huge opportunities especially for businesses to make sure that they're on the right track.
Yeah. I've always wondered how analytics actually align with consumer behavior. I mean, you think it would be a direct correlation, right? But I think when there's a change in consumer behavior, does it change the way we should predict analytics, right? Or use analytics to predict the next move for some of. And in particular, when I think about that, I'm looking at like back in the day when you had like sentiment analysis, right? And how, because the language changed within sentiment analysis, for example, if someone says, hey, that's the bomb, right? They may, analytics may deem that as being something negative with regard to sentiment. But as language change, we have to also change the way in which we leverage data. Any thoughts on that?
I'll jump
Anyone?
in.
Yeah, anyone jump in there.
Pierre, why don't you let you go
Okay.
first? Go
Yeah,
first.
Yeah.
Pierre.
Okay.
like double
Yeah.
dutch, right? Getting
I'm
giddy
used to
over
that
there.
NBA jump ball thing. So there you go. It's a big. I think the big challenge, you're touching upon a lot of pieces. I think one of the biggest challenges is getting a sense of segment. Even when you're doing sentiment analysis, is trying to figure out which segment of your audience is responding. This is the part that becomes part of that walk up I described, from going from a very basic analytics, something that's very descriptive, to something much more predictive. Because now what you're doing is you're trying to figure out which segments of your data is telling you how customers are performing or responding to your campaign message, or just in general how you're performing as a company with your customers as well. So I think segmentation becomes a big deal. It is a challenge, to be honest with you. It's part of the larger topic about attribution and where things are going, but segmentation is a kind of a big deal.
Yeah, great points, Pierre. I think that's an important topic. That's actually an interesting topic because it makes you think about, well, are businesses even thinking about that when it comes to their marketing? Are they thinking about how their consumers are actually speaking, writing, and talking? So it's important to, I would say, at least on a quarterly basis, figure out, okay, what is being searched? How are people talking? How are people using some of these terms? So then we actually know to look into that as far as from an analytics standpoint, at least.
Yeah. So
And
what
maybe
I'm
just to
hearing,
add on. Oh, sorry.
yeah. No, go ahead, Hannes.
So I think just to add on, I mean, great points. Also, I think a lot of businesses struggle with unstructured and structured data. So I might define them first just for the audience. But from my perspective, unstructured data is like, when you have data about your customer, but it's not in the right format, it's not the right information, you don't know how to use it. So a lot of people, I know Google ran a Gemini AI event last week, and they're saying about in North America, 62% of businesses, especially small businesses, are probably around 80%, are dealing with that challenge of unstructured and structured data, right? It's overwhelming, right? Look, there's a lot of data points. Like, I'm not here to argue with anyone. It's how do you use the data and how do you use it effectively and efficiently? And that's where, it's great to say predictive analytics, but you have to also build that foundation of how do you use the data first? And then from there, how do you actually get some predictive analysis on that?
So I guess for some of the layman's to break it down, unstructured analytics could be some receipts in a shoebox versus having data in a spreadsheet. I don't know. Does that track?
Yeah, and maybe just to add on and like even to keep it simple, like let's say you're targeting a specific customer B2C, right? And let's say you're selling a toothpaste, for example, right? If you have the customer's information, first name, last name, you might have the phone number, but it might be somewhere else. Now, why toothpaste would have your phone number, that's a different story, but that's just an example. But it's really is how do you have that holistic view of the customer where you know who they are, what they want from you, what do they buy? How do they get information? Are they on TikTok 4 hours a day or not? You have a TikTok account. So that's where the structured and unstructured data comes in because you have pieces of information in your database. And that's a lot of small businesses and large businesses as well. But how do you organize that data so that you can use predictive analysis to drive the results that help your business?
Absolutely. All right. So let's talk about personalization. I know she kind of touched on that a little bit in terms of how to use the data for personalization purposes. We know that it's essentially the holy grail of marketing these days, right? But what's in your tech toolkit for making this happen at scale in terms of personalization?
So, because I'm dealing with a lot of small and mid-sized businesses, they might have HubSpot or Salesforce as their CRM, as their basis. So I'm using a lot of Zapier APIs, right? This is not a product placement for Zapier. I use Braze as well, but it's really, I know we get sometimes very focused on the marketing technology, but it's really good to take 2 steps back and say, look, what are you trying to do? And when you say personalization, how does personalization help your client, right? So that is, I know I work with a lot of financial solution insurance companies, right? So how do you get the best insurance product for true personalization by leveraging tools like Zapier, Braze, and integration and so forth? So that's what I've used. Now I'd love to hear what obviously other folks are using as well.
I'll say from my end, it's been a mixture of a couple of things. Most of the times when I had analytic requests, they were always built around Google Analytics. I had one client where we actually used I want to say it's search metrics, but that may not be the name, but it was a spreadsheet that will allow you to import the Google Analytics data and actually build a profile around it. These days, I'm using a lot more R and Python, and there's like a whole world. I love the fact you brought up a whole bunch of tools, but just among R and Python alone, there's like a series of dashboards, series of user interfaces that people are learning how to not only build these predictive models based off of the data. You can actually blend data from Google Analytics, Google Ads, even take Google Search Trends, and even Google Search Console, blend those together, even make a regression model if you can using R or Python, and then building some very good modeling that helps you understand what's relating to each other in terms of a trend or if there's a correlation between one variable versus the other. So those things have been happening a lot more frequently in the last several years, to be honest with you, because I've seen more and more of these. And we're going to see more of it with AI, by the way, too. I think what AI has done real quickly is that it allows us to blend together our data much more easily without dealing with so much syntax, basically. I mean, there's still some things you check, but as far as the initial setup, they're getting things like Claude and Chat GPT are getting way better at trying to give you a good setup so you're not spinning your wheels on syntax as much as you are the statistics part.
So real quick, taking a step back, you mentioned R and Python, right? And so I know there's some viewers and listeners that are going to ask themselves, well, what the heck is R and Python? And how would we actually apply in Python to whatever challenge they're trying to solve?
I'll answer that real quick. Well, they're both programming languages. Most people have heard Python for like real hardcore developer building an app or building some software. R is a little bit more of a statistics model. They've both been around for years. The thing I usually recommend to people is to try R. I'll say why a little bit. It's not that the syntax is I wouldn't say it's easier. It's a little bit more straightforward. And I think with Python, most of the people who are really into Python are heavy duty developers with a lot of experience and a lot of different tools. With R, there's always different little plugins that you can use to build some dashboards and keep it within a certain realm. And I think this is the big message you want to give to small business owners is, hey, look, there's a lot of data here, but you want to increment naturally and not get so overwhelmed with everything. When you feel overwhelmed, that means that you need to have somebody dedicated to dig into it. But if you can build a simple dashboard from it, which is what R will allow you to do, and Python would do to some extent, but I would say for R, it might be a little bit more straightforward if you have had no programming, because there's a lot of people in that community that are coming from this not quite a techie background, so to speak. They're more interested in the data. So that's usually it. So they know the ways they're kind of getting through that much more quickly.
And so we're still talking about personalization at scale through AI and predictive analytics and so on. So, Chris, here's a tricky one. We're talking about collecting data, but how do we walk that fine line between personalization and being a little creepy in terms of asking
Yeah,
for
I
all
mean,
this
yeah,
information? What are your
yeah,
thoughts?
no, we gotta, we definitely gotta be careful because I mean, some of these tools, it's kind of scary what we're able to see sometimes, right? And so we definitely gotta be careful not to scare away the potential customers. If we know too much about them, we have to kind of think about what would they be comfortable with when it comes to personalization, So there's a lot of ways to do that. You can know more about them, their age, male, female, where they live, but we definitely want to just be careful and figure out how can we contact them to the point where, yes, it's okay. And they like the personalization, not just a creepy way, but like, how can we actually help them get what they want faster? So how can we make this customer experience better? How can they have a better time at our location or using our product? We got to think about the customer experience first.
Yeah, it's true. I think over the years too, as we collect information on clients, we ask them their birthday. And over the years, I would say years ago, that field would get completed more frequently. Nowadays, not so much. And I think because of all the data breaches and things like that, and we have to end up putting like, hey, we send gifts or we want their shirt size or something like that, so that they know like, okay, this is what we're planning on doing with it, is establishing that and building that relationship with you, so that we can send you a birthday gift, but we need to know the information, right? And so we've just noticed over the years that start to diminish a little bit. And I'm pretty much aligning that with a lot of the data breaches that have taken place, right? So is asking for your birthday, is that kind of creepy? I don't know, would allow for better experience. There's arguments for both sides there, but Pierre, I want to know what are your thoughts?
I think as a business, you have to think about consent more now than ever. And I'll explain why, because we're relying on different platforms to deliver all this great value to our customers, to be all cool and everything. But but every platform, the problem with the data breaches is that every platform has different levels of consent. If things change, that impacts our business. I'll give you a quick example. I think it was last week they announced this. Mozilla is in trouble right now because of consent based off of their browser. And let's say that I had designed my app around Firefox, for example. And I know it sounds a little strange, but this even for that, by designing it around that one platform, that means I'm risking my customers if there's a concern about consent. And I think for every business, you need to think about, you know, to the example given about birthdays, when are you asking for the birthday? What is the form that you're asking for that birthday? And then you need to be ready to disclose what you're going to do with that information and how it would be disposed of if the customer decides that they don't want to be on your email list anymore. We have to be thinking in these terms because not only are we vulnerable with platforms, but even the legal legislation, particularly with AI right now, there's actually two of them I could name where they're talking about you have to disclose what you're training the data on and how you are, or what the permission was. Every law is going to be dealing with, you have to be accountable for what permission, what permission was being asked for, what is being asked for, and what was the method you did to do that. And I think we have to be, a little bit more aware of that as we move forward. So I'll say that.
Certainly makes sense, especially, we're located in California, and California have its own set of laws with regard to data privacy and so on, as well as, the European Union and so on. And so you really have to be focused on making sure you're abiding by those certain laws based upon each region, right? And naturally, if you're doing businesses all over the world, you have to make sure you cover all of that in your privacy statements and things like that. So, yeah, I think it's interesting. The more information that you're looking to collect to provide this very personalized experience, it's sort of you're swimming upstream, against the current when it comes to the different laws and policies versus the type of experience that you want to deliver to the customer, right? And so it's
Yeah.
ebb and flow there, but only the strongest will survive at the end of the day, right? So let's move on to some ethical considerations with regard to AI and data analytics. What keeps you up at night when it comes to the ethical side of AI and marketing?
Sure. So, I mean, I think the first thing, I mean, not to go back to the previous point with privacy, right? As marketers, let's be honest, general public, I would say probably in US and Canada, which I'm primarily focused on, has kind of lost trust with brands and companies on how they use their data, right? So, and then when they hear AI, they're thinking, hey, are you going to take my data and take it to the next level where you're trying to maximize your dollars but not responsible as well? So I think as marketers, AI is a very new field. I know a lot of people claim to be AI experts, but it's one of those things where it's changing overnight, where it's hard to keep up as well, not only for individuals, but for companies and brands as well. So as marketers, let's be honest, general public, I would say probably in US and Canada, which I'm primarily focused on, has kind of lost trust with brands and companies on how they use their data, right? So, and then when they hear AI, they're thinking, hey, are you going to take my data and take it to the next level where you're trying to maximize your dollars but not responsible as well? So I think as marketers, AI is a very new field. I know a lot of people claim to be AI experts, but it's one of those things where it's changing overnight, where it's hard to keep up as well, not only for individuals, but for companies and brands as well. So I think for me is when I look at all the challenges that we could face with AI, I try to take two steps back and say, okay, how we're meeting customer needs, how we're building the right brands, and how we're trying to be responsible and in the end use some common sense and do the right thing as well. So I think that's where, there's a lot of concerns, but, I'd love to hear what other folks have thoughts as well.
Yeah, great points. I think some of the concerns is just using other people's information, like creators. Me being an author myself, I've did an audiobook, and I think about how easy it is for people to just get that information and just use it as their own. Even when it comes to search optimization, it's like, are they creating the articles themselves, or are they just throwing something in AI and hopefully they get somebody else's article? So not only is ethics, but also the results. Whenever you use this content, are you going to get sued down the line, or are you going to get penalized by Google, for example? So there's a lot to unpack, when it comes to just the ethics concerns. And I think, especially if let's say a person doesn't have a budget and they decide to like steal somebody's work, their voice, there's going to be concerns down the line. I think people got to think about 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the line, are you going to be in trouble for using that information?
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with Chris. It's the data in a nutshell is nebulous. And that's what I usually tell people. And what I mean by that is that, if you when it comes to products or things, you can kind of physically see it and you can kind of know how to protect for it. If you had automobiles, for example, in a car lot and you're the dealer, you know how to kind of lock up your dealership so that way the cars are not stolen. Data is a little bit different. For personally identifiable information, you can have one database or one table with one piece of information, another table with another piece of information, and both of those they look legal. But when you blend the data together, you might be identifying somebody. If you take a picture of someone and if you have the license plate number in that picture, you are kind of identifying an individual. So it should be pixelated before you're posting it online for somebody. Otherwise, you should be going back to consent. You should be asking for permission. So I think, and doing this, I think is hard for a business, particularly for a small business in general, because if you're trying to sell apple pies, let's face it, you're more concerned about crust, you're more concerned about apples, and maybe having good pie. It's a little hard to kind of get the data part right. And even the best of us are struggling at it. And I know the small business owner will be struggling as well too. So, but we have to think. We have to think in terms of be familiar with our systems as best as we can.
That's fair. Yeah, that's fair. And also, when we think about just the experience that we would have using AI, or in particular, we'll have clients that require us not to use AI, in particular because their data could be used somewhere else, right? You have your proprietary information, you put the proprietary information into the data, and obviously that feeds the model, right? Like it needs content, it needs data in order to create outputs for all users that use the AI tool. So, our client work could end up in that pool, right? And so that's what I always wondered, why would people say, no, we absolutely don't want to use AI? And I found out that was the case because there's legal ramifications for that, because they want to make sure that their IP isn't shared with ChatGPT or OpenAI as an example, right? And so it goes more to it being a legal concern more than even an ethical concern with regard to who's actually producing that content and who's using AI to do so. But I also think, though, that there is ethical concerns potentially with the outputs of AI, and in particular, bias in AI, right? Because AI is created by humans. We naturally have our own biases, right? And so, what are your thoughts about that? Some of the bias in AI, and is that something that we should always factor or filter for when I try to identify those biases? So, the piece of their content or data that we have isn't skewed one way without us knowing it. What are your thoughts about that?
So I'll go. So I think it's definitely important. I think we got to think about who is creating this technology. So the type of people, who are they, how do they look, age range, and also don't just depend on just one tool. So you want to use a variety. Like whenever I'm using AI, I try to use like 3 different tools just to see what the differences are when it comes to those products. I mean, there was a story, I'll say over 10 years ago, where, you go to the restroom and you have to have the heat that comes out to dry your hands. So when that was first created, it turns out that a blind person, it didn't really notice it because of the skin color. So it was because the people that created, they didn't consider that. So definitely think about that all the time, and also use multiple tools, and hopefully in the future, that's factored in when it comes to when they're creating it.
Yeah, I would say we're starting to get better at it. It's still in that use the Gardner curve. Is still in that initial phase, basically more than anything else. We saw some things a few years ago with image recognition. To what Chris had talked about, the idea of using image recognition for policing. There's a couple of cities now that have banned it, and I think that was the right move at the moment, because they couldn't really. In fact, there was a gentleman in Detroit. I remember this distinctly. I think he was arrested because he was misidentified because they used image recognition in that case. I think there's been a few others since, but I think the challenge now is trying to figure out for all of this in terms of, where do we want AI to be used and where do we need to have human intervention or human review on data. That part is probably going to be the big part that we're going to be dealing with, because right now we're just seeing the first steps in AI. The next steps are going to be multi-agent AI. And while those things are going to be robust in terms of how they communicate, we still are struggling with, where do we think these things should be applied? And if they are applied, are they going to create a bias? And I think this is something that people are trying, that should be educating themselves pretty well up.
Sure.
Yeah,
And you mentioned multi-agent AI. I know, real quick, Hannah, you mentioned multi-agent AI. So just for those who aren't familiar with what that is, go ahead and give us a little example or definition.
Real quick. Real quick, most people are used to GPT. That's a single, think of it as a single agent. Multi-agents are usually multiple GPTs are acting within a system and concurrently. So think of it as maybe as a factory. You may have a couple of AIs, one that is coordinating inventory and maybe say another one that's coordinating production. And they both have to talk to each other to make sure you have a certain activity in terms of supply and certain activity in terms of manufacturing. But it's basically agents that are operating within a system. So it's like multiple agents. I always tell people, think of it as going from Jarvis and Iron Man to, I know Honos is going to like that one, but going from Jarvis to Iron Man to Vision being a little bit more independent and not necessarily within the mask and being tied up. So there you go.
Like that.
And maybe just to add on, I think one of the things people might sometimes assume, people are, I find out with some clients where, or even just people I talk to, is they already expect AI to be perfect. And I think that's where we're a long way from that as well, right? Where even for, like let's say you're running a regression analysis, like I know on ChatGPT, like I think right now it's 62 to 68% correct. Sometimes the hallucinations will go. Look, these are numbers that, ChatGPT, have stated and all. And I know for me, I think also as a marketer, we also have a responsibility whereby when it comes to, anything where maybe data is misinterpreted or showing bias, we have to pause and say, okay, what are we trying to do? How does it not only impact our customers, but how does it impact society in general as well?
Yeah.
So before, it's, AI shouldn't be something that, hey, I'm just going to do AI and sit on a beach. That's not the intention, right? Where you do have a responsibility still, whereby, I guess it gets to do a lot of the legwork, but you still have to take the responsibility to analyze it, understand it, and then before you make a decision, say, is this the right thing to do? And why is it the right thing?
Makes sense. Yeah, makes sense. So, Chris, in your experience, what is the secret sauce in all these AI marketing wins?
The secret sauce is what you put into it, right? So people complain about how they don't know how to use some of these tools and these services, but it really comes down to like what type of, you have to have the idea, but you have to have those right prompts that's going to lead you to the results. And just taking it to a step further than just asking ChatGPT what they think about this graphic or what to post, go into more details. I mean, there's one tip that I heard where they said, they told the AI tool to ask them 10 questions to make sure they understand what the task was. I thought that was a great idea because what you put in there is going to give you the best results. So I think learning more about like what we really want will help out in the future as well for your projects.
Great. And Hannah, give us a success story, right? Who's killing it with AI and predictive analytics, in your opinion?
I mean, I think for me, I think kind of with my experiences, I do have to give Google the credit there. I mean, I think, there's a long list of companies. The first one comes to my name is Google because they are leveraging, they are improving Performance Max. They're using Data Studio. I know in my experiences, I do have clients and partners that I work with are very Google centric and they're using all the Google different platforms and they are, analytics console, as Pierre was mentioning as well. So, I mean, I'd have to give the shout out to Google right now. Now, I think someone can come in and definitely steal that pretty quickly. But right now, my first impressions go to Google.
Got it. Okay. Hopefully we don't have any Microsoft listeners in, but we'll move on past that. All right. So let's talk money. Pierre, how can businesses prove that all this AI stuff is actually worth the investment?
Ooh, good question. I think with technology, it's always a struggle to get the ROI right, and I think for AI, it's still a little. To be honest, I think it's still a little bit early in some instances. Not that it can't be helpful. It's just that the challenge is right now is trying to get people to imagine where it could be helpful, and a lot of the suggestions so far in the last year or two has had AI, but focusing on content. Now, don't get me wrong. If I can get my presentation out the door faster, I'm all for it. But I know that my business is not just presentations. I know it's not just content. I know that there's a lot of marketers who probably don't want that much. They just want a little less more content than what they've had before. I think that what businesses should be looking for is where can I use AI to help organize their steps so that way that way things can go much more smoothly. I mentioned about R and Python, and yeah, they are very technical, but people are learning how to use AI to not only from ChatGPT and Gemini from Google and Claude, but also through a lot of the plugins for a lot of their developer software. Amazon Q is a good one right now. Claude has been very, very popular among developers in the last year. They've actually kind of gained some props, basically. But in all those instances, people are looking to use AI to help on certain steps and to make it very simple on certain steps to make it easier to get a piece of software done or data analysis done rather than getting stuck on the syntax. And I think this is for the ROI. That's what you want to look at is where can I use AI to make some things a little bit smoother and quicker in the process of delivering a service to a customer.
Yeah, that makes total sense to me. Absolutely. So let's shift gears and talk about the future trends in AI. Okay. And so Chris, how can businesses get ready for this AI tsunami?
Say they should write down their processes, write down all the processes that they currently do. Think about like who they're using to implement these processes. Think about the processes they use to get customers, to maintain customers, to service customers, and think about how AI can help them in that regard. And I feel like the future, it could be each person's going to have their own little AI. Everything's going to be personalized to them. The AI tools are going to know exactly more about us as business owners, us as professionals, and then everything will be a little bit smoother. And we might not even have to type in what we need, to some of these tools sometimes as well. But yeah, just understanding your process, writing them down and thinking about how can the future like help these processes move forward as well.
All right. And Henos, what's coming down the pipeline in AI and predictive analytics that's going to shake things up?
So I think, that's a great question. I think from my perspective, I think a lot of the integrations are where, people's mind goes. Where what I mean by integrations is you have all different data sets and models, right? So, and it kind of leads into marketing mix modeling. And for those who may not know, marketing mix modeling is how do you take all your different campaigns, all the different things you do across multiple platforms. So let's say you're doing something on Facebook, on TikTok, on search, offline, online, and how do you put all that information together whereby you know how to spend your dollars more effectively, efficiently? So to answer your question about where I think it's going, especially, you can probably tell I have a little bit of a digital marketing background, but it's really is how do you take all this different data and how do you build that model where someone, your client, your boss, whoever might say, look, I've got $10,000, where do I spend it? And how do I spend it effectively to build a brand or drive return on investment? So that's where I think that we've already started, but I think now organizations are going to really ramp that up in terms of all the different data sources, the different connections, and how do you build that end-to-end model where it tells you how to spend your budget.
That's great advice. So Pierre, let's wrap it up for us. What should we be excited about? And what should we watch out for in this brave new AI world?
Okay, well, other than more Marvel movies in 2025, yay. And I gotta throw that in there. I would say if I had to pick, I think Hannah's brought up a good point about integration. I think people are going to start looking at how they can integrate AI into more than content. I think we're going to see much more of that. There's a white paper, I think I think it was by Salesforce. It was talking about multi-agents. I think we're going to see more of that coming into play. And more of these platforms like a Hugging Face. There's actually a variation on Hugging Face called Hugging Chat. It's actually it's a chat bot tool that lets you switch in between models. So if you have Gemini, if you have Llama from Meta, if you have Chat GPT, there's actually a little switch that will let you switch between models. And I think what's going to happen is that between that and the multi-agents, we're going to see more and more people figuring out how to integrate, how to make choices on the models that they want to work with. And that will come whether they are, using Chat GPT at being a prompt engineer, or if they are taking Meta Llama and actually building an application using the AI within it. So we're going to see much more of that in 2025 coming up.
That makes sense. All right, gang. So now it's time for everyone's favorite segment, bad, bold, and brilliant. All right. So I've got some juicy stories about AI companies and their customer insight strategies, right, that I'm going to review. And I want your opinion to see if it's bad, bold, or brilliant. Sound good? All right. So
Okay. Ready to rock and roll.
yeah, let's start with Netflix. Netflix is leveraging AI algorithms to recommend personalized content to users based upon their viewing history. Now, my first recollection that this was actually happening was when I was sifting through Netflix, and I'm a Black male, and there was a movie that I didn't even realize there were any Black people in the movie, but it was on the cover photo, and I was like, what is going on? That's so weird, right? But I knew that they thought they used the analytics of my viewing history and showed key art cover photo for that to help me or to get me to watch, right? And so they announced plans for further optimization and of the recommendation systems by integrating more sophisticated AI models to tailor these content suggestions. Give me your opinion. Henos, what's your verdict? It's bad, bold, or brilliant?
I'm going to say bold, right? This is where it gets a little tricky, right? Because I think for us, for anyone who's had Netflix for many years now, you kind of expect Netflix to make recommendations for you, right? So they've done a great job establishing like the customer behavior of they make recommendations. Now, where the hesitation comes is what's that data and how are you making those recommendations? Like the example you just gave. So I think for me, it's bold. I'm hoping that they do a lot more testing before. I think one of the challenges of AI, sometimes people just roll it out and say, oh, we're just going to test it out, and see how people respond. I'm hoping a large organization like Netflix will be bold to do it, but also will take the time to test it so that any of the example you gave is not always just based on very basic sets of data.
That's fair. That's an interesting take too. So how about Google's new AI ethics principles? So Google made headlines by announcing a new set of AI principles focusing on fairness, transparency, and accountability in AI applications. Now, this decision reflects a growing awareness among AI companies of the importance of ethical considerations in leveraging predictive analysis to understand behavior. Now, Chris, do you think this is bad, bold, or brilliant?
I think it's brilliant because that's one of the number one concerns, so many people have, especially internationally as well. So I think they're getting in front of it because they know everybody's going to be wondering like, hey, how are they using this data? What's going to happen? So I think it's brilliant to be.
All right, love that perspective. Pierre, last but not least, Amazon AI chatbots for customer service. Amazon deploys AI-driven chatbots to streamline customer interactions and provide real-time assistance. Amazon's decision to integrate AI chatbots into their customer service ecosystem aims to improve response times, enhance personalized support, and gather valuable insight into consumer preferences and behaviors. So what's your call? Is it bad, bold, or brilliant?
I would say bold, maybe a bold plus, so to speak.
Are we talking about some fake here? Or?
It's almost like I want to say brilliant, but not quite. I'll explain why a little bit. This is going to be I'm in a similar boat with panels about with Amazon. I think they've also have done very well with recommendation, and to be honest with you, your customers are expecting it. Where I put them a little bit at a plus is that they are at a very interesting crossroads with AI. They do have an AI plugin but it's more aimed at developers. It's not aimed at the consumer set yet. And there's been a lot of discussion about that because they don't have anything for Alexa yet. And supposedly they're supposed to partner with Claude to bring
Mhm.
Claude and into for Alexa. So I see that as a plus. I don't see it as brilliant because it's not theirs necessarily. Still not sure why they won't do something the consumer yet. But I think it's a bold move because I think what this would do is that it would catapult them a little bit more into the consumer mindset. It might help them with Claude. I think Claude benefits no matter what, but they've also are an investor in Claude. But I think the benefit for Amazon is that they have an opportunity to tie that into Alexa and tie it into, getting your recommendations wherever you are. And I think that's the golden spot, particularly if you are a retailer, which Amazon is. It's no longer just books, but we know that they're a retailer and a grocer, thanks to Whole Foods. But between all of that, they have a chance to kind of make recommendations where you are for the things that people are dealing with on a daily basis. And that part, I think when they get that going, then it'll be brilliant. So I'll say that, leave it there.
Fair enough. Fair enough. All right. So now it's about that time for tools you can't live without. It's a lightning round segment, and I want to hear about the tools that keep you sane and successful. All right. Hanos, hit us.
I mean, in digital marketing, the Google Suite, Analytics Console, AdWords, as you can imagine, when you're running campaigns for clients or in your job in the digital marketing space, you do need the Google tools. I got Adobe as well, Campaign. So, and now I've started doing a lot of integrations with ChatGPT just to see what recommendations they have. But right now, Google and Adobe are kind of the primary ones that are on the top of my head.
Nice. Chris, your turn.
Yeah, similar to GA4, Google Search Console, and Looker Studio, just to make sure you get those reports on a weekly basis. So yeah, those are the few that I have to have every week.
Awesome. Pierre, bring us home.
Okay, Claude is definitely a favorite among the AI set. Quite a bit. As far as like just software, I'm going to surprise people and say Evernote. I know it's going back a little ways, but they have a very good AI search that will search through your documents and do a summary. And that I think that's been a game changer for them. I know some people are not very good at don't like Evernote all that much. I personally am an Evernote fanatic, so that's where I land and stand.
Yeah, I've been with them for a while. No, I agree. I agree. All right. So before we wrap up, let's hear what you all have got cooking. Hanos, what should listeners be on the lookout for? How can they get in touch with you? Let us know a little bit more.
Sure. So I'll make the easy one. You can always reach out to me on LinkedIn, right? I love meeting people. I love connecting with folks. I know for me over the next couple of months, got a few projects in the pipeline, but it's really is what I'm doing is really not like other people as well. I'm also learning about AI. I don't claim to know everything. So I'm also first in line reading all the blogs, reading all the marketing materials while I'm connecting with folks. So for those who love to connect with me, just reach out to me on LinkedIn. And when I pass the ball off to someone else.
All right, Hanos. And, you're absolutely right. No one can be an expert at this AI stuff because when we started this conversation until when we ended the conversation, it has completely changed. Right? There's new
Unfortunately,
elements,
yes,
right?
it's hard to keep up.
Exactly. So, yeah. So I definitely hear you there, Pierre. Pierre, what are you working on? Where can people reach you? Let us know.
Well, LinkedIn is the best spot right now. There's a Zamana page, so you can find my company there as well as my own profile. I do a lot of writing on Medium. So if you're on Medium, feel free to follow there. And I'm also writing for CMS Wire. I've been doing that now for now almost about 12 years. I'm kind of almost shocked. And so I usually share articles through LinkedIn. You can find our Zamana profiles on Facebook, Twitter. I should say X, but it's Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Threads. And then one more piece I'll share too. I'm actually working on courses. That's actually a new thing that has cropped up in the last year or so. I've been an adjunct teacher for Trine University, getting ready to be one for Chaplin College. I'm still working on the paperwork for that. And I'm actually developing a course for them. So I'll have some new stuff going into the new year. So definitely follow, talk to me, and let me share your concerns, and let me see what I can do to be of help.
Awesome. Now, what about you, Chris? Tell us what you have coming up, where people can find you, and so on.
Okay, yeah. So chrisinwest.com. And yeah, so far just do Google Analytics training, so GA4. So we do half day, full day, even 3 days of Google Analytics training. So yeah, that's what we focus on right now. But yes, things going good.
Awesome. Well, that's good to hear. And for all those who are wondering, who is this charming host? Well, I am Jonathon Delane, founder of Digital Delane, and we are a full-service digital marketing agency where we bring fresh ideas, campaigns, and brands to life. So if you got a brand that needs a boost, then hit us up. All right? So that's a wrap, folks. What a ride. What a ride. I know your brain is buzzing with different ideas, and hopefully, if that's the case, we definitely done our job. But don't forget to hit that subscribe button wherever you get your podcast. You can also swing by digitaldelane.com for more marketing goodness. And if you love this episode as much as we did, leave us a reply and certainly spread the word. Until next time, keep innovating. And remember, the future is AI, but ideas, those come from human beings like you and I. So we'll chat on the next episode. Until then, see you later.